Good morning, everyone. Good to see everyone. Pardon the redundancy there. Good to be with you. I'm excited about today's message. One of the things that I like to do is focus on the fundamentals, right, and get clear. I think you can't get more fundamental than what we're going to be talking about this morning, the basics of um, the one and the many, the personal and the impersonal, God and the world. And what we do on a Sunday morning is actually open this up to all different paths, all different traditions, so that many voices can speak. And in that plurality of voices, you often find the synthesis or the integration. One of the marks of our age, I think, the 21st century, began in the 20th century, but it gained increasing influence was as we became more of a global humanity, we started to really come out of our exclusivism and our pigeonholed ideas when it comes to spirituality. As the world opened up and communication became worldwide and multicultural, we began to see the commonalities and the parallels within a lot of these traditions. So pioneers like Sri Aurobindo, Carl Jung, Joseph Campbell, uh, Vivekananda, these individuals really opened up this way of looking at religions in terms of their deep structure and how there is a deeper message that's being given. And so, having said that, we are going to focus primarily on the Advaita tradition of India this morning, the non-dual tradition of India. But, they don't call it Hinduism in India. So if you're born in India, they don't refer to they don't refer to themselves as Hindus or their religion as Hinduism. That's actually a Persian loan word that was kind of given to them by, I think it was Alexander the Great, based on the Indus Valley or the Indus River. So Hinduism became the tagline there. But they refer to their tradition as Sanatana Dharma, which is translated from the Sanskrit as the eternal natural way. The eternal way. And you'll find that paralleled in Taoism. Tao is the way. Even the early Christian church in the first few chapters of the book of Acts, they were called the Church of the Way. So this idea of the way is ancient, it's eternal. And so these traditions, when they are clearly seen and clearly integrated, they show you the way. Our job as spiritual practitioners and those who desire truth, we have to get what's in the way out of the way so we could see the way. And what's in the way is our false thinking, our dualistic thinking. And so as we keep coming back to this, really it's a threefold or a three-step process. You have to empty out everything you think, become completely silent. Then you go into what would be the transcendent, still, one mind, one truth, one self, that is completely transcendent of the world. Right? There's no world in the utter stillness and the vast. There's no separation. There's no individuality. But then the third and final step is you see this one truth arising as the world. And so to put it succinctly in the words of Sri Ramana Maharshi, Brahman alone is real. Right? Brahman being the absolute truth. Brahman alone is real. The world is an illusion. Brahman is the world. So in our spiritual traditions, we oftentimes split that one realization up into different parts. And Sri Aurobindo makes a lot of comments on how that can cloud us. So Brahman alone is real. A lot of our traditions, especially the non-dual traditions of India and Buddhism, They will ascetically separate themselves from the world, deny the world, escape the world, get out of the body. There's only suffering and pain in the world and the body. Get out. It's a burning house. Go into nirvana, utter extinction. That's Brahman alone is real. The world is an illusion. Well, a lot of people actually don't want the world to be an illusion, so they identify completely with the material body, and they make illusion true. And so they have this clinging to form, clinging to identity, clinging to ego. And so a lot of religions will also cater to that position, keeping the individual ego alive and telling you that this individual ego that is identified as the body will now live forever if you say the right formula, or if you go to the right church, or if you believe in the right book. You'll have a passport where your ego gets to live in a very grandiose fashion forever and ever, right? That would be making illusions real. But the linchpin here and the real synthesis is Brahman is the world. And so we're going to explore this today in its multifaceted form. And I think you're going to find it very helpful, if not a great awakening experience. I do want to start by getting even clearer on this word Brahman, right? It comes from the the tradition of East India, the Vedic tradition. The word, the root of Brahman means to shine, or to shine forth, or to branch out, to emanate, right? To extend. So at the core of reality, at the core of the absolute truth, is this shining, emanating, radiating, extending being, the great sun, right? Excuse me. So Sri Aurobindo defines Brahman very, very good for us. Excuse me. Brahman is the reality of things, which fills and supports their idea and form. Whatever reality is in existence, by which all the rest subsists, that is Brahman. An eternal behind all instabilities, a truth of things which is implied, if it is hidden, in all appearances, a constant which supports all mutations, but is not increased, diminished, or abrogated. It's the changeless ground of being. It supports all things that change, and is the essence of all things that change, right? Including the way that you're stringing your concepts together right now and trying to figure this out, including the volume that you hear in your ears and the words that are coming out of my mouth. So, in other words, as we progress into this conversation this morning, we're trying to dial in the absolute truth, which is Brahman is the world. And when we think of Brahman as the world, that is the essence of thought, the essence of your sense perceptions, the essence of your feeling, the essence of your bodily sensation. Whatever there is that it feels substantial and real and experiential to you, that in its purest essence, not in the distortion of the ego, but in its purest essence is the Brahman, is the absolute reality. You've never left your source. In fact, you're breathing your source. You're breathing by your source. You're thinking by your source. In fact, at one point, somebody approached the great church father, St. Augustine, and said, well, what do you say about the atheist who denies God? And along these lines, St. Augustine said, well, he's using God to deny God. Like, you couldn't be aware, you couldn't think, you couldn't conceptualize without this fundamental reality. You could do with it what you will. You can distort it, you can deny it, you can hide from it, you can hate it, you can believe it's not there, but all the while you're using its energy, which is the reality of all things, to be this opposer of reality. Brahman is the world. Sri Aurobindo continues, there is such an unknown X, right, an X factor, which makes existence a problem, our own self a mystery, the universe a riddle. If we were only what we seem to be to our normal self-awareness, there would be no mystery. If the world were only what it can be made out to be by the perceptions of the senses and their strict analysis and the reason, there would be no riddle. And if to take our life as it is now and the world as it has so far developed to our experience were the whole possibility of our knowing and doing, there would be no problem. Or at best, there would be but a shallow mystery, an easily solved riddle, the problem only of a child's puzzle. Right? But there is more, and that more is the hidden head of the infinite and the secret heart of the eternal. It is the highest, and this highest is the all. There is none beyond, and there is none other than it. Brahman alone is real. To know it is to know the highest, and by knowing the highest, to know all. So the secret of everything else is explained by its secret, as it is the sum and end of all things. So everything else amounts to it, and by extending itself into and as all things, it achieves the sense of its own existence. Okay? So this is what we keep always coming back to in these esoteric teachings. You know, when you sit, like in our Zen class, we'll say that, you know, in Zen, the teaching is you're already enlightened. There's nothing that you need to do to get enlightened. What you have to do in the terms of Zen is cut off the mind road. Cut off this endless chatter of conceptual thinking and dualistic perceiving. Quiet down, empty out. And when you rediscover your own nature, you'll discover that yourself and the highest, or the absolute truth, are one. And then that vision will show you that there's none other. That's utter fulfillment. In the words of this tradition, it's ananda, it's bliss, it's limitless love, it's limitless joy. Because the beauty, as we're going to see, is that it's one and many. It's personal and impersonal, and beyond all our categories. It can't be confined within these positionalities of the human mind and think that we, with our little Dixie cup, can catch the waterfall. So it does take mind training. And one of the ways that mind training showed up in ancient India was to sit near a realized master and learn the secrets of Brahman, or the absolute truth. And so in ancient India, they developed a body of literature called the Upanishads. And what Upanishad means is to sit nearby the master devotedly. Right? So you're sitting near the one who emanates this truth, and thereby awakens within you your own deeper awareness that you've never left your source, that everything you think is an illusion. And so now you can let all of those illusions settle and rediscover the one behind the many, and then realize the one is the many, and feel the bliss of that. Upanishad. Sit near devotedly. So we're going to be looking at the Chandogya Upanishad. This is one of the foundational Upanishads, and we're going to be looking at a story of a little boy, and his name is Satyakama. And so there's a lot to a name when you look at sacred literature. Satya in Sanskrit means truth, and kama means desire. So the one who desires truth. And so you'll see that this idea of kama, you've probably come across it before, maybe in book form, as the Kama Sutra. Has anybody heard of the Kama Sutra? Right? It's a sutra on romantic love, copulation, etc., like expressing the erotica, right? So erotica is where we really get our derivative is from the Greek, eros. Eros comes from kama. And so in Plato and Plotinus and all of these deep Greek thinkers with their mystical tradition, eros was just like kama in terms of its applicability. You can have kama for the illusions of the world. You can have eros for the illusions of the world. You can be totally lost in the erotica of forms. And you suffer because the ananda, the bliss, is a flash and you can't hang on to it. So when you're trying to find the ananda in form, it's ever elusive. You can't get it. It promises you that. You're almost there. You're there. Now it's gone. So using eros in a horizontal way in terms of the world of form, you're seeking for truth and illusion. And you're misusing eros or kama. If you want satya, your eros or your kama needs to go towards the truth, satya kama. And so in Plato's philosophy, this is how you basically go up the chain of being, go up the spectrum of consciousness through eros. Eros gets you to the door of God. It's the same energy. It's just being redirected. So it's an erotic ascent, as Plotinus would call it. So back to our story. Satyakama, he's a little village boy, and there's a nearby rishi or sage that lives in the village. And Satyakama desires the truth. He wants to wake up. He wants to know his real self. Right? This is what he lives for above all else. So he goes to his mother and he says, "Mother, I feel the time has come for me to go to the home of a spiritual teacher. From whom does our family come, so that I may tell him when he asks my lineage?" So there's cultural background here. A lot of the times the lineage determined your caste, right? All the time. And the two highest castes were allowed initiation. So you had to be a Brahmin or a Kshatriya. You had to be a priest class or caste, or an intellectual warrior administrator caste. And if you were of the other two castes, well, maybe at the merchant level, the Vaishya, but definitely not the Sudra, the laborer class. They were oftentimes pushed out. And there's some horrible stories about the lower castes wanting truth and being brutalized for it instead of initiated into it. So Satyakama's in this pickle. He asks his mother, "Give me our lineage so that I can basically prove my pedigree to the rishi or the master, Gautama, and then I can be led into the esoteric teaching." And this is the mother's response. "I do not know, dear, who your father is. You were born when I was young and going from place to place as a servant girl. Your name is Satyakama, and my name is Jabala. Why not call yourself Satyakama Jabala?" So what she's telling him is, I was repeatedly raped by my housemasters. So I don't know who your daddy is. So when you go to the rishi, just tell him you're my son. So no pedigree. In fact, an illegitimate child, right? Can't get much lower than that in terms of lineage. Right? You see this in Jesus' day too. Jesus was considered illegitimate by the high-ranking priest class of his day. And there's allusion to that in the Gospels, where Jesus says, you neither know me nor my Father, that's why my words have no place in you. And the priests, the Sadducees, and the Pharisees said to him, we know who our Father is. We weren't born in fornication. And we know that that telescopes into rabbinic literature later on down the line in the Talmud, which was a compendium of Jewish lore. And Jesus in the Talmud was said to have been illegitimately conceived. Mother Mary was a hairdresser, says the Talmud, which is the worst occupation for a woman, right? All vanity, all eros. And she was raped by a Roman soldier. And they give the name of the Roman soldier Pantera, which means a total beast. So Jesus in the Jewish lore is an illegitimate son by a woman of ill repute who was raped by a Roman soldier who was a total beast. Can't be the Messiah. So Satyakama has this type of lineage going on with him. He goes to the rishi nevertheless. And Satyakama went to Hari Drumata Gautama and said to him, Sir, I want to become your disciple. Well, what family are you born from, bright one? Sir, I don't know. My mother says she bore me in her youth and doesn't know my ancestry. She says that since my name is Satyakama and hers is Jabala, I should call myself Satyakama Jabala. This is the master. None but a true Brahmin, right? A true seeker, a realizer of God. None but a true Brahmin could have said that. Totally transparent. Owning your life, owning your shadow, owning your shame. And you're nothing. And you know you're nothing. And you own that. You can be humiliated by your place in the society. You can be considered nothing by those of other, of an other opinion where, prestige and rank and who you know and where you come from and your family, all of that means something. But when it comes to truth, it means nothing. And a true teacher sees that. And instead of, being deceptive or duplicitous or trying to make better of his situation and appear as if he was more than he was, he owned it. And as a result of him just being completely honest, you will find Brahman. It takes that total honesty to own who you are. So, none but a true Brahmin could have said that. Fetch the firewood, my boy, and I will initiate you. So this was another cultural thing. You go get the firewood, they create the fire sacrifice in that Vedic altar. He does his mantras and begins to initiate the boy. The boy receives diksha, and it's initiation. So now he's opened energetically to receive the higher teaching. And he says, I will initiate you. Now look at how he finishes this. You have not flinched from the truth. That's why you're being initiated. You have not flinched from the truth. You looked at your shame and you owned it. You didn't flinch. You didn't let it stop you. Oh, I have no ancestry. Why am I even going to go see the master? No, you didn't flinch. You're going to get the truth because of that. It has nothing to do with lineage. So now look at how, this is why I love this story in the Chahandogya Upanishad. So he gets initiated. Remember, Brahman alone is real. The world is an illusion. Brahman is the world. You're going to get this, Brahman is the world, in this Upanishad. So he gets initiated, and then the master brings him 400 lean and sickly cows. So this is his sadhana. He's not getting out the books. He's not learning the secret mantras. He's not studying and meditating in isolation in a cave. He gets 400 sickly cows. And the master says, I shall not, the master gives him the cows and basically says, go take care of them. And the boy says, I shall not return until they become 1,000. So this is his spiritual practice, a cowherd boy, a Gopala, right, which is one of the names for Krishna. You're getting some Krishna motif in here. The master's name is Hari Drumata. So Hari is a name for Krishna. Krishna is considered, one of his names is Gopala. He's a cowherd boy. So here you have a cowherd boy. But watch what happens. For years, Satyakama dwelt in the forest, tending the herd. Then one day the bull of the herd said to him, Satyakama, sir, he replied, we have become 1,000. Let us now rejoin our teacher's family, and I will tell you one of the 4 feet of Brahman. Please tell me, revered sir, the boy said. Here's the bull giving the teaching, the Dharma. There are 4 quarters, east, west, south, and north. This is 1 foot of Brahman called the shining. To meditate on these 4 directions is to become full of light and master the resplendent regions of the cosmos. Knowing this portion of the truth, Agni, or the fire of aspiration, will light you up even more. Okay? Before we go on to the fire speaking to Satyakama, there's a real-life story of Sri Ramana Maharshi. He passed away in 1950, so a near contemporary with us. He lived in southern India, and he had a great awakening experience at 17, and as a result went to live on Arunachala mountain in Tamil Nadu, southern India. So for years he was a hermit, a recluse, and then eventually through his clear, wide open awakening, disciples began to gather around him. And they created Skanda Ashram, which would later become Ramana Ashram. And one of the disciples that gathered around Ramana Maharshi was Lakshmi the cow. Look this up if you have interest in any of this. Lakshmi the cow came into the village one day, and she had a very peculiar attraction to Sri Ramana and would follow him around wherever he went. And he gave her so much love, very unusual for Ramana, who oftentimes was just very, equanimous. She would run into the ashram all upset and then put her head on Ramana as he's speaking from the couch, and he would stroke her head and she would calm down. And so for years, Lakshmi the cow was part of the discipleship of the ashram. And when it came time for her passing, Ramana went to her, and he did this for his mother as well, and only 1 other disciple, so a total of 3 times. Ramana would put his hand on the top of the head and on the heart, and he would send the current into them right when they were passing, so to remove any subtle obscurations or blocks, so that it was total awakening. So Lakshmi was the first to receive this very rare sparsha or touch from Sri Ramana. And later on, Sri Ramana said Lakshmi was awakened. So they actually have a samadhi, if you go there at Arunachala mountain, a shrine for Lakshmi, who's considered an awakened or enlightened being. Right? So this is part of the matrix of these teachings that the world is Brahman. And Brahman takes many forms, all forms, and sometimes can awaken as a cow or a dog or a monkey, like at Hanuman. Okay, so then we're not going to belabor this too much longer, but then the fire speaks to Satyakama. He learns the fire is speaking the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit's speaking through everything. Are we listening? So now the fire gives him instruction, tells him another leg of Brahman. And then he goes further back towards his master's hermitage, and as he's traveling, a swan comes along and tells him the third leg of Brahman. So he's getting initiated by the animal kingdom and the elemental kingdom. And then finally, there is, a diver bird, right? A waterfowl flies nearby and spoke to Satyakama. And every time the fire, the swan, the diver bird speaks, sir, right? Babu or Baba, it's this. So his relationship to the fire is this. His relationship to the waterfowl is this. To the cow, sir, Baba, Babaji. It opens up the world. If the world is Brahman, this is how you open up the X factor of what's appearing as life. So he gets initiated into the four legs or four aspects of Brahman. So by the time he gets back to the master's hermitage, he's completely awake. That was his initiation. That was his awakening. And so Satyakama returns to his teacher's hermitage. Satyakama, said his teacher, you glow like one who has known the truth, Satya. Tell me, who has taught you? Satyakama replied, no human, sir. But I wish to hear the truth from you alone, for I have heard that only the teacher's wisdom comes to fruition for us. Then his teacher taught Satyakama the same wisdom. Nothing was left out from it. Nothing was left out. That was repeated in the Upanishad. That's really another theme of our teaching this morning. Nothing is left out. Brahman alone is real. The world is an illusion. Brahman is the world. The world is an illusion only because we are misperceiving it. Upon initiation into the higher truth and the awakening of the higher self and this reverence for the sacred within all life, we begin to see the third and final realization. Brahman, or the Holy Spirit, begins to shine out from all life. The chair, the floor, people, fire, birds, cows, everything. Brahman is the world. What's stopping that? Our mutated thinking, our conceptualizing, our bifurcation between subject and object, right? Me and everything else. So nothing is left out. So this is another way of looking at what we were saying before, right? Brahman alone is real. That's the path in this tradition of the Jnani. It's often mispronounced as Janani. It's not a J, it's a Jna. So it's a jnani, a knower. So the knower is the guy that, or the gal that wants to get out of the burning house, go back to Brahman. The world is an illusion. I got to get out of here. Right? So the jnani denies that Brahman is the world. So it's not real non-duality. It's thinking non-duality is a severance from something that we're calling the world. It's a limiting of God. God's not that. Well, God's not my illusion of that. That's why in A Course in Miracles, which often gets misinterpreted with this jnani perspective where you got to get out of the world, he says, think not you made the world. Illusions, yes. But what is true in heaven and earth is beyond your making. Brahman is the world. So the jnani is half-baked, not a full realization. Something's left out. What we want is nothing left out. Real non-duality. So this is Sri Ramakrishna, another great realizer, also a near contemporary, a generation before Sri Ramana. He lived at the latter part of the 19th century. Listen to this. The jnani gives up his identification with worldly things, discriminating, it's not this, it's not that. This is all illusion, right? Only then can he realize Brahman. It is like reaching the roof of a house by leaving the steps behind, one by one. Get out of the dream. Climb the ladder back to reality. Forget all about the manifestation. Brahman, the impersonal, the absolute, the indescript, the utterly transcendent, alone is real. Everything else doesn't exist. That's the jnani. Sri Ramakrishna says, look at how the vijnani realizes this. The vijnani is the one who is more intimately acquainted with Brahman. Did you hear that? The vijnani is more intimately acquainted with Brahman and realizes something more. He realizes that the steps are made of the same materials as the roof, right? As the absolute. Bricks, lime, and brick dust, they're all Brahman. All these steps. That which is realized intuitively as Brahman through the eliminating process of not this, not that, is then found to have become the universe and all its living beings. So at first we deny our superimposition, our ego projection, what we think everything is, what we think everything means. That's all meaningless. That doesn't exist. That's all a projection of our deluded mind. Yes, that has to be ended, completely gone, swept away. But then you go into nirvana. Brahman alone is real. But then you realize everything you were misperceiving essentially is God's energy. And you'll see all living things and the world from a vision of recognizing this is only God. Ananda. Wow. I'm this, we're this, everything's this, he's this, she's this, and they indwell all of us, and they're beyond us. Wow. This is living. This is joy. This is who I am. This is who we are. The vijnani sees that the reality which is without feature, without qualities, without attributes, is also with features, with qualities, and with attributes. I only see Brahman. I only see God. God is everything. Okay, so uh, a little bit more from the Upanishad. This is the Isha Upanishad. Isha means the Lord. And this Upanishad is really including everything. This is what makes this Upanishad so beautiful. It says that Ishwara, Isha, the Lord is enshrined in the hearts of all. The Lord is the supreme reality. Rejoice in him through renunciation. Desire nothing. All belongs to the Lord. Those who deny the self are born again, blind to the self, enveloped in darkness, utterly devoid of love for the Lord. The self is one, ever still. The self is swifter than thought, swifter than the senses. Though motionless, he outruns all pursuit. Without the self, never could life exist. The self seems to move, but is ever still. He seems far away, but is ever near. He is within all, and he transcends all. Right? Now listen to this. Those who see all creatures in themselves and themselves in all creatures know no fear. Those who see all creatures, all living things, in themselves and themselves in all creatures know no grief. How can the multiplicity of life delude the one who sees unity? So you don't have to deny the multiplicity. You see unity. And then the multiplicity is a reflection of the unity. Like the sun on the ocean, lots of sparkles, seemingly different waves, sparkling, but the same ocean and the same sun. The one is the many, and the many is the one. It's not an either or. It's a both and a beyond both and. And then the Isha Upanishad says, in dark night live those for whom the world without alone is real, right? The external world. Those who think just the external world of the body is real live in darkness. Listen to this now. Darker still is the one that the world within alone is real. Even more ignorant is the one that thinks God is within only. This world that I see isn't real. Darker still. But those who combine action with meditation, right, being in the world but not of it, alone can cross the sea of death through action and into immortality. So we have heard from the wise. And again, last thing here. In dark night live those for whom the Lord is transcendent only. In night darker still, for whom he is immanent only. But those for whom he is transcendent and immanent cross the sea of death. With the immanent and enter into immortality with the transcendent. So we have heard from the wise. You still with me? Let's see. A little bit on Sri Aurobindo's commentary on the Isha Upanishad. Just a little bit. I'll try to make it a little. So here's Sri Aurobindo. The many in the universe are sometimes called parts of the universal Brahman, as the waves are part of the sea. But in truth, these waves are each of them that sea, their diversities being those of frontal or superficial appearances caused by the sea's motion. So they appear to be different than the one sea, these many waves. But these are only appearances. You're not really separate from your source. You just appear to be. When you think you're separate from your source, then that becomes a lived experience and truly a nightmare, right? Because you're no longer connected to the ananda, the joy. As each object in the universe is really the whole universe in a different frontal appearance. Wow. You are the rich kid. Talk about lineage. Talk about privilege. You are the universe contained within this individualized experience. The one who sees all living things in herself and herself in all living things knows no fear. Right? We're the many and the one simultaneously. So each individual soul is all Brahman, regarding itself and world from a center of cosmic consciousness. So one of the beauties of this one and the many is that the divine bestowal is that, as it says in A Course in Miracles, don't think that your relationship with God is reciprocal when it comes to your creation. God created you. You did not create God. And God created himself as you. And this is what Aurobindo is saying is this individual center of cosmic consciousness. You're like a facet within the divine jewel of absolute reality. You have your unique facet, and you are an expression of the one. And so your individuality is simultaneously in the unity as the unity. It's both and beyond both and. Brahman alone is real. The world and all the egos in it are illusion. Brahman is real. The Brahman is the world. Okay, let's see. In becoming each individual is Brahman variously represented and entering into various relations with itself in the play of divine consciousness. In being, each individual is all Brahman. It's holographic. The whole is in the part, and the part is in the whole. That's why when we get clear of our ego thinking, and we actually go into the total silence, then this knowledge will shine forth. You can't be taught this through language and thought and concept. So what we're doing here, again, to throw out these $10 words, in the Advaita tradition, you're supposed to, when you're hearing this absolute secret teaching, you're hearing it, Shravana. And then if you're really wanting the truth, if you're desiring truth, then you begin to turn it over in your mind and really inquire into the different possibilities and the depth of it and how it's impacting your present reality. You work through these ideas, manana. And then as you get to the essential quality of these teachings, they eventually will phase you into experience, which goes beyond thought. It's nididhyasana. You go into total absorption. You then realize, I am Brahman. Aham Brahmasmi. I am Brahman. But you don't say that, because if you're saying it, I am Brahman, you're not being Brahman. That's the conceptual mind coming back. You'll know. The individual may regard himself as eternally, so finally here with Sri Aurobindo's commentary. So what I love about Aurobindo, like I said, is his integral approach to the truth of reality. So in these teachings, remember, Brahman is totally transcendent. And then that means there are no individuals. It's just Brahman. Or you have a devotional relationship with Brahman. And so you would have absolute non-duality. There's no soul, there's no individuality, there's no world, totally gone. And you have a school of Shankaracharya, absolute Advaita, right? And that can be a realization. It is a realization, it's legit. But Aurobindo saying, but that's not the absolute end all and be all. You can actually be this focal point of cosmic consciousness and be in a bhakti or a devotional relationship with God. So you can recognize the simultaneity of your individuality and the oneness of God. Right? So that would be qualified non-dualism. And so there's a oneness and a difference happening at the same time. Stay with me for one more. Then the third poise of supreme reality is you're forever the servant of God. You're forever the soul, and God is God, you're the soul. And there's a duality there. And what Sri Aurobindo is saying is, yes. Yes, absolutely yes, all of that. And then beyond all of that. So this is what he says. The individual may regard himself as eternally different from the one, or as eternally one with it, yet different. Or he may go back entirely in his consciousness to the pure identity. But he can never regard himself as independent of some kind of unity, for such a view would correspond to no conceivable truth in the universe or beyond it. These three attitudes correspond to three truths of the Brahman, which are simultaneously valid, and none of them entirely true without the others as its complements. Their coexistence, difficult of conception to the logical intellect, can be experienced by identity and consciousness with Brahman. Nididhyasana. Once you get to the clear, it's just like, of course. Of course. Am I laying a heavy trip on you guys this morning? Well, we'll lighten it up a little bit. So this is getting back to what we saw with Satyakama. He's got a challenge in life, but that challenge ends up actually being the gateway into his awakening, right? Same with this woman that went to go see Sri Ramana. So this is taken from talks. And her husband, he was part of the Indian civil service. They were both, as we're told in the reading here, very cultured, very intelligent. And then when she finally came to see Sri Ramana at the ashram, she got sick. And like her whole time there was like she was laid up in bed. So she couldn't go to the hall and sit with him and get the teaching. So she was really kind of upset and nervous about this. But then they did start to have some interactions. And this is what she asked him. If one is to withdraw oneself, why is there the world? Ramana. Where is the world, and where does one go withdrawing oneself? Does one fly in an airplane beyond space? Is it withdrawal? The fact is this: the world is only an idea. What do you say? Are you within the world, or is the world within you? I am in the world. I'm part of it. That's the mistake, says Ramana. If the world were to exist apart from you, does it come and tell you that it exists? No. You see it exists. You see it when you are awake and not when asleep. If it exists apart from you, it must tell you so, and you must be aware of it even in your sleep. She says, well, I do become aware of it when I wake up. Then he says, do you become aware of yourself and then of the world? Or do you become aware of the world and then of yourself? Or do you become aware of both simultaneously? She says, I must say it's simultaneous, right? My ego sense and the world that I see, they arise together in my awareness. That's how I'm existing in this world. Ramana, were you or were you not before becoming aware of yourself? Do you admit your continued existence before and when you become aware of the world? Yes. If always existing yourself, why are you not aware of the world in deep sleep, deep dreamless sleep, if it exists apart from the self? I become aware of myself and of the world also. So you become aware of yourself. Who becomes aware of whom? Are there two selves? No. So you see, that is wrong to suppose that awareness has passing phases. The self is always aware. But why did pure Brahman become the personal God and manifest the universe if he did not mean it? Did Brahman or the personal God tell you this? You say that Brahman became Ishvara, the personal God, and so on. This too you did not say in your deep dreamless sleep. Only in your waking state do you speak of Brahman or God, Ishvara, the personal God, and the universe. The waking state is a duality of subject and object, owing to the rise of thoughts. So they are your thought creations. So do you see, when we go into Brahman alone is real, we have to deny all our illusions, including God, the way that we think of God. Total openness, beginner's mind. I don't know. Ramana, do they say to you when you are asleep, or do you become aware of others who see the world in your sleep? Sorry, this is what she says. But the world exists in my sleep, even though I'm not aware of it. And then Ramana says, what is the proof of its existence? Others are aware of it. Do they say to you when you are in sleep, or do you become aware of others who see the world in your sleep? No, but God is always aware. And then she says, leave God alone. He says, leave God alone. Speak for yourself. You do not know God. He is only what you think of him. Is he apart from you? He is that pure consciousness that you are, in which all ideas are formed. You are that consciousness. So what we're getting at here is the leaving behind of all we think we think. When we come to the pure consciousness, Brahman alone is real, Everything that I think of myself and the world is an illusion and has to be denied. When I come to the ground of my own being, then I will see, not the I that I think I am, but I will see Brahman is the world. Finally, he says you're not going to be able to, Ramana says, you're not going to be able to get this through theological explanations or scientific explanations. He says, last thing here. Sorry. Here it is. So she gets to the point where this is all stirring in her. She has no energy. She's depressed because she's been sick the whole time she's at the ashram. She doesn't understand what he's saying. She can't figure out how her world that she thinks is real doesn't exist. And now watch what happens. Her sickness, like Satyakama's social stigma, that's the catalyst. Her sickness now becomes the catalyst. So she basically says, I have no energy for any of this practice, this inquiry, this meditation. And then she says, Sri Bhagavan's answers do not permit us to put further questions, not because our minds are peaceful, but we are unable to argue the point. Our discontent is not at an end. For the physical ailments to go, the mental ailments should go, but go when thoughts go. Thoughts do not go without effort. I'm full of anxiety and stress. Effort is not possible with the present weakness of my mind. The mind requires grace to gain strength. Grace, she says, must manifest only after surrender. So all questions, wittingly or unwittingly, amount to asking for grace. And then Bhagavan smiled and said, yes. She says, surrender is said to be bhakti, to be devotion to God. But Sri Bhagavan is known to favor inquiry for the Supreme Self. There is thus confusion in me. Bhagavan, surrender can take effect only when done with full knowledge. Such knowledge comes after inquiry. It ends in surrender. When you finally clear through this discrimination, this, not that, ending your own thinking, your heart opens to grace. And love comes pouring in, the clear mind. You fall in love with Brahman. You fall in love with the world. Blue bag's going to go around. Now the challenge is practicing. Right? Any thoughts, comments, or questions?
Good morning. I think this was very, very over my head.
Really?
This morning.
3 steps. 3 steps. God alone is real. Your thoughts are illusions. Deny those, clear those, and then you'll realize God as your own nature, your own mind is God's mind. And then God will show you a world reborn in His light, and the world will reflect His light. As Jesus says in A Course in Miracles, a blade of grass then becomes a thing of wonder. It becomes Disney World, but God's version of it. right? But we have to clear. We have to end all of our thinking about what we think God is, what we think we are, what we want, our desires for the world. So God is real. My thoughts aren't. God's going to show me his thoughts, and his thoughts will show me the world reborn. Is that clear?
If I didn't know anything about the Course of Miracles, it would be. Because in the Course of Miracles, God doesn't even know we're here.
But this is God doesn't know the world you're making with your false thinking, right? Remember, I used the Course, and I said, don't think you made the world. Illusions, yes, but what is in heaven and earth is beyond your making. God is here. We're not seeing God, we're blocking God because of our thinking. End your egoic identity and its thoughts, and you'll see that you never left your source, and God shines through everything. That's what the Course says, if you want to hear that. But we always get what we want. Any final thoughts, Jeff? No? Okay, good. They always prove helpful to many. Charging this with the intention that all beings may know themselves as the self and find the joy of true living. And so it is. Amen. All right. I think we ran a little over. My apologies for that. All right. Let's stand, seal the deal. In the quiet of the heart, we open to the truth of who we are and who God is in this eternal moment where the light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us, and the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is. Amen. Have a beautiful day, everybody. Tomorrow night, 7:15. Love you guys. No, just finished. Oh.